To perform a calculation, you enter a formula. A formula in Excel is a mathematical statement that performs calculations based on constants, cell references, or both. All formulas in Excel begin with the equal sign. For example, the formula equals B4 plus B5 adds up the numbers contained in cells B4 and B5 of the worksheet. Formulas include the use of operators, which tell Excel what to do with the constants and cell references. For example, the asterisk represents the multiplication operator. A function is a built-in formula which can save time when working with a lot of numbers. The name of the function appears immediately after the equal sign. The arguments to the function are contained in parentheses. Arguments are the constants or cell references that the function uses to perform calculations. For example, instead of using the formula equals B2 plus B3 plus B4 plus B5 plus B6 to add up the numbers in the cell range, you can use the function equals sum B2 to B6 instead.
For your convenience, numbers in the budget spreadsheet have been edited to reflect the actual amounts of 2022 and 2023, and the projected amounts for 2024.
This worksheet will be more informative if totals are displayed. Let's enter a formula in cell B6 that displays the totals of cells B4 and B5. You can enter a formula directly in the cell or in the formula bar. Notice that as you type, Excel displays a list of functions which is part of the autocomplete feature. For this example, you won't use any of these functions. Notice that Excel has added colored borders around the two cells whose references are used in the formula. This is a helpful reminder of what values will be used in the formula. When Excel sees a cell reference in a formula, it uses the values stored in that cell. So in this example, Excel will add 294,673 and 31,621. After you enter a formula, the result of the formula calculation is displayed in the cell. The formula itself is displayed in the formula bar. You can think of this arrangement as having the problem or question in the formula bar and the solution or answer in the cell. An advantage of using cell references in a formula is that if one of the values in a cell changes, then the result will be updated accordingly. Let's see what happens when you change the value in cell B4. The value displayed by the formula in cell B6 has changed based on the new value in cell B4. Keep in mind that you cannot directly edit the value displayed by the formula in cell B6. The value in the cell is dependent on the values in the cell references. You can, however, edit any portion of the formula to display a different result. The procedures for editing a formula are the same as for editing other cell contents. For your convenience, two more formulas will be added to the worksheet so that you can edit one of them. The amount displayed in cell D6 is not correct. The formula currently subtracts cell D5 from cell D4 instead of adding the two cells. To modify the formula within the cell, you can double-click the cell to display the formula. You can also single-click the cell and change the information using the formula bar. Let's double-click cell D6 to correct the formula. Notice that the formula appears in cell D6 and in the formula bar. To correct the mistake, you need to change the minus sign between D4 and D5 to a plus sign. then commit the entry. Good! The formula bar displays the corrected formula, and cell D6 displays the correct calculation result.
Next, you need to calculate the totals for the 2022 expenses in cell B16.
Often you will need to perform calculations on a range of cells. You can type each cell reference in a formula, but that is time-consuming and can result in errors. Instead of entering all the cell references and operators into the formula, you can use a function. For example, the sum function adds the constants and/or cell references that you provide. Let's use the sum function for cell B6. As you type the name of the function, the autocomplete feature will display a list of matching functions. Start by entering the equal sign and the name of the function. The next step is to enter the arguments for the function within parentheses. Arguments can consist of cell references, constants, or both. For example, to add the numbers 4, 8, and 12, you would enter equals sum 4, 8, 12. You can continue to type the formula, or you can select the sum function from the autocomplete list. Excel has entered the first parentheses required for the arguments. The screen tip indicates the types of arguments required for this function. You can also click the sum text in the screen tip to open a help window that gives you more information about this function. In this example, you need to add the values in the cell range B9 through B15. You can either type B9 to B15 yourself, or you can select the range using the mouse. Let's use the mouse. Good! You can edit the cell range within the cell if necessary. After verifying that the arguments are correct, you type the closing parentheses and commit the entry.
Good! The 2020 expenses column is now more informative with the total amount displayed.
Excel provides dozens of different functions to perform both simple and complex calculations in your worksheet. Often, you may not know the exact name of a function or the arguments it requires. The Insert Function tool guides you through selecting a function and entering the arguments. The Insert Function tool and other helpful tools are located on the Formulas tab on the ribbon. Let's take a look.
The Formulas tab enables you to add a variety of functions to your worksheet, as well as work with formulas. You will work with many of these tools throughout this course. Let's enter a function that displays the average projected sales income from 2022 to 2023. Start by entering a label in cell F2.
Now let's use the Insert Function button to calculate the average sales income. The Insert Function dialog box enables you to select from hundreds of predefined functions grouped by category. You can search for a function based on your description or select a function by category. The current category is most recently used, and the functions within this category are listed in the Select a Function list. Open the category list and explore the different function categories. Then press Escape to remove the list. The next step is to choose the function you want and click the OK button. Let's use the Average function to display the average of the values in the range you will select. Good! The Average function appears in the formula bar in the active cell. The Insert Function dialog box has been replaced with the Function Arguments dialog box to help you enter the required arguments. Let's explore this dialog box before moving on. By default, Excel has entered the cell range B4 to E4 for the function arguments. These are the cells directly to the left of the cell containing the formula. Notice that the actual values for this cell range are also displayed to the right of the number 1 arguments box. In this example, cell E4 does not need to be included in the function arguments because it is blank. Only the values in cells B4, C4, and D4 need to be used to calculate the average. You can select a range of cells while the Function Arguments dialog box is open. The Collapse dialog button to the right of the number 1 argument box shrinks the dialog box and tracks the cells you select. Let's try this now. Excel has entered the range you just selected. Now let's display the average value for the range. The average function calculated the average and is now displaying the result. If you know which function you need to perform a calculation, you can bypass the Insert Function dialog box and display the Function Arguments dialog box. Excel offers several ways to do this. Although you won't enter a function, let's take a quick look at these optional methods. Start by selecting cell F5. The buttons to the right of Insert Function in the Function Library group let you select a specific function and access the Function Arguments dialog box. Let's use the recently used button. Excel has entered the Count function into the selected cell and is displaying the Function Arguments dialog box. From here, the procedures are the same as those you performed to enter the average function. Now, close the dialog box. You can also access the Function Arguments dialog box while typing a formula in a cell or the formula bar. Start a formula now by typing the equal sign. Notice that the left side of the formula bar now displays the name of the most recently used function. When you start typing a formula, Excel replaces the name box with the functions list box. You can click the arrow next to the functions list to select a function. Let's try this now. Again, Excel inserted the function and is displaying the Function Arguments dialog box. Now let's look at another tool on the Formulas tab. The AutoSum button in the Function Library group inserts the sum function and automatically determines the arguments it needs. The left side of the AutoSum button inserts the sum function, and the AutoSum arrow offers other commonly used functions. Let's use the AutoSum button to enter the total expenses in cell C16. Excel assumes that you want to add the numbers directly above the cell you selected. If this is not correct, you can change the cell range before committing the entry. In this case, Excel assumed correctly. Another way to use the AutoSum feature is to select a range of cells first, including a blank cell to contain the formula. Let's try this method to display the average land rental income. Cell F5 will contain the formula. Before inserting the function, however, take a look at the status bar. Whenever you select a range of numbers, Excel automatically displays the average, count, and sum in the status bar. This is helpful if you don't want to insert a formula but would like to see a quick calculation. Now, select the average function from the AutoSum list. Good! This time Excel did not give you the option to change the arguments because you had already selected them. After you enter a formula, you may find that another part of the worksheet requires the same formula. For example, cell D16 should contain the same formula that is used in the other expenses total cells. You can copy formulas using the same procedures as for copying text and numbers. Let's use the keyboard shortcuts to copy the formula from cell C16 to cell D16. The formula bar displays the copied formula. Although the arguments in the original formula are C9 to C15, notice that the arguments in the copied formula are D9 to D15. Excel knows to alter the formula to use the cell references that are relative to the formula cell. This cell reference is called a relative reference. In this case, Excel changed the column reference from C to D, since the copied formula is in column D. Now let's copy the formula in cell F4 to cells F9 to F15. That way, the 3-year projected average of each expense will be displayed. You can copy the contents of one cell to multiple cells by pasting the copied cell into a range. The formula for the first cell in the range is displayed in the formula bar. Notice that again, Excel used the relative cell references. This time, the row numbers of the arguments have been altered. Now press Escape to remove the contents of cell F4 from the Office clipboard, and then press Enter through the range to see how each formula uses relative references. When you move a cell containing a formula, the cell references do not change. Excel assumes that you still want the formula to use the same cell values in the calculation. Only the new location of the formula is different. Let's test this by moving the formula in cell E5 to cell F5. As you can see in the formula bar, the formula still uses the values in cells B5 to D5. For your convenience, more data will be added to the worksheet to illustrate another type of cell reference. Sometimes you might not want Excel to use relative references when you copy a formula. When a formula must refer to a specific cell and not change when copied, you use an absolute reference. Absolute references contain a $ before the column letter and/or the row number, such as $D, $3. Let's look at an example of an absolute reference. The savings entries in rows 18 and 19 are used to calculate the percentage of the total income that needs to be put into a saving account. The current percentage is contained in cell A19, but it might change later. The formula in cell B18 uses an absolute reference to ensure that the value in cell A19 is always used when the formula is copied. It multiplies the total income in cell B6 by the percentage in cell A19. Now, copy the formula in cell B18 to the two adjacent cells and then select cell C18. As you can see in the formula bar, the absolute cell reference did not change. This formula multiplies the total income of 2020 by the percentage in cell A19. Note that you can specify just the column reference or row reference to be absolute. For example, the reference $2 will always refer to row 2, but the column reference will change depending on where the formula is copied. This is called a mixed reference. You've finished working with formulas and functions. Now save the workbook. In this chapter, you learned how to enter formulas and functions using a variety of tools. You typed formulas and functions in the formula bar and also used the Insert Function tool, Function Arguments dialog box, and AutoSum. After entering several formulas, you copied those formulas using both relative references and absolute references.